Hello and welcome back to our video series detailing the functionality of our CycloMedia plugin to AutoCAD. My name is Sean Kinahan and I'm a senior software engineer with Brockwell IT. Today I'll be going through a few of the different functions that we haven't seen thus far, including rendering panoramas and the point cloud widget and import of point clouds using that widget. So first we're going to start with rendering a panorama. So as you can see, I've already got my viewer, my view cone instantiated. I'm here on the very edge outskirts of the city of Alexandria. I'm going to go ahead and export a panorama of what I'm looking at. It's going to, by default, just attach to the recording location that I am at. And as you can see, when we zoom in there, we have an image reference object that gets created. This is a reference, so it's important to keep in mind that if you move this drawing elsewhere, you need to be very careful to keep these images with your drawing, deliver them with their drawing, that is, otherwise this reference will be broken. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that and move on to the point cloud widget, which is really the most interesting functionality, in my opinion, offered by this plugin. So I've actually already instantiated the point cloud once since I started up the plugin, but ordinarily you would be prompted to locate your recap project files, your point clouds on your hard disk when you first start up the point cloud widget. So we shouldn't be asked here, that should just be ready to go. As you can see, this is the nearby data that's available. This plugin, much like the Web Feature Service plugin, actually reacts to the user moving around. So when you take an action, or stop taking action rather, it should display on the viewer where data is available. And part of that is just so that these things function independently. I don't even need, in fact, my viewer to be on to work with this LiDAR information, although they absolutely can coexist. They do not have to. The point cloud widget is the one widget that you don't need to be logged in to use. The web feature service does require credentials, so you have to log in through the viewer before that'll be activated, but the point cloud is ready to go from the beginning. We have a few options here. Toggle, which I did just to power up the widget. You can also obviously toggle it back off again. Import actually brings in all the data in the surrounding area. And bounds actually lets you affect how far out this outer boundary reaches. It's actually, the boundary currently is somewhere in the middle here because it's actually just over any overlap with that boundary on the center of the screen. We'll treat it as reported information. So if you want more or less data, you can play with this bounds value. It works very similar to the scaling that we saw with the web feature service. So let's go ahead and do the most interesting thing, which is to actually import this data. I'm going to just look around so we get some context for where we're at. We're outside this Dollar General. End of this driveway right here is where my view cone is between these two text objects here in AutoCAD. It's just important to get a little context for when we no longer have the viewer and we're trying to actually import the data. Sometimes it can help to know what you should be seeing, so that in turn you can be like, yeah, that's the driveway there that I can see being rendered as I bring in these point clouds. Now this can take a few minutes. This is obviously a lot of data we're bringing in here all at once. Each of these tile looking segments inside of the larger boundaries represents 50 feet by 50 feet, and it's actually 5 by 5 squares that are being rendered here. So on the outskirts there may not be any data, and here in the middle near the road where the recordings would have been taken, we should see very, very dense data, so it differs there. We no longer in fact need the widget. This is just sort of visual purposes. It's sort of a visual cue to show that it's filling up where we specified it to, but in fact once we've hit import we don't really need it around. We can toggle it off and the point clouds will continue to come in. One other thing we can do is use the built-in point cloud manager of AutoCAD, and here we can see all the scans enumerated that we imported. So I can see which scan is which. I can interact with these point clouds as I would any other, changing how they're rendered. These are the 4 regions. These are the master recap project files that are created from each of these individual little scans. So if I expand this one, I can see what scans make up that actual point cloud, for instance. And that's this one. So now that that's just about all rendered, we can see that these are like any other point cloud. So we can, for instance, this one, let's see which of these 4 this is. It's not that one, it's not that one, it's that one. Sorry, let me just go to, trying to get a good viewpoint. Sometimes it takes a few tries with so many scan files. There we are. So in fact here, you can just see the sign of the Dollar General through the trees. We're sort of looking through the other side of the trees that have been captured in the point cloud. So here we can of course do anything else we would normally do with a point cloud. We can display it by intensity rather than color, and we can obviously see things close to the road, the leaves and branches that are closest to the road where the recording would have been. Those are registered much greater intensity as things further back, further away. We can view by elevation. I believe these points that I'm working with now don't have different types of classification. They're all classified the same. Otherwise, we would be able to view the different classification of the different scans. We can, of course, edit the point size, level of detail. So if I decrease this point size, that is, all the way down to 1, we can see much finer detail, but we can also see that the data is not really as dense as it appears. It looks a little better. Matter of fact, displayed a little bit bigger. And of course, if I zoom out here in model space, let's see if I can return to my standard view there. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. At any rate, these point cloud files are now all imported and are in exactly the point that we would want them to be, expect them to be. They line up exactly where we were looking around when we had the view cone. We saw that quite obviously with the driveway and the sign being located where they ought to be. We can, of course, even create solid surfaces using this point cloud data, take measurements from it. There's quite a lot you can do once you're working with point clouds in the context of a greater design file. Thank you very much. Please check in with our other videos if you'd like to go further into detail on how this plugin works.